Imagine the hills of southeastern Turkey 12,000 years ago, a time when, according to the official version of history, people were nothing more than small groups of hunter-gatherers. They had no cities, no agriculture, no writing, and suddenly they built something incredible: Göbekli Tepe, the oldest known temple complex on the planet. Older than Stonehenge by 7,000 years. Older than the first pyramids by 6,000 years. Massive T-shaped pillars weighing up to 20 tons each, perfectly carved from limestone. The pillars are covered with reliefs of wild animals: lions, snakes, scorpions, foxes, vultures. Circles and rectangles built with astonishing precision. Scientists were shocked. According to old textbooks, such monumental structures could only appear after people had transitioned to agriculture and a sedentary lifestyle. But Göbekli Tepe proves the opposite. It was built by hunter-gatherers, people who were not yet growing bread and had not domesticated animals. How did they do it? How did they organize thousands of people? Where did they get their engineering knowledge? And most importantly, who were these people really? Modern archaeology and genetics are beginning to provide answers. And these answers are changing our understanding of how humanity developed. Göbekli Tepe was built roughly between 9600 and 800 BCE. The complex consists of more than 20 circular structures. Some pillars reach a height of 6 meters. They depict not only animals but also abstract symbols that no one has been able to fully decipher yet. What is interesting is that after about 1,500 years of use, people intentionally buried their temples with earth and left the site. Why? This remains one of the biggest mysteries. For a long time, scientists believed that the builders were simple nomads. But recent research shows a more complex picture. The people who created Göbekli Tepe already had a developed gather large groups, coordinate work, and feed hundreds of construction participants. This requires planning, leadership, and possibly a shared belief or ideology. Now about DNA. There are still very few direct genetic samples from the builders of Göbekli Tepe themselves. The preservation of material in this region is poor. But the genetics of neighboring populations in Anatolia and the Levant provide important clues. The ancient inhabitants of this region were mainly Western hunter-gatherers with an admixture of genes from earlier Near Eastern groups. Their genetics differ from those who later became the first farmers of Anatolia. This suggests that the builders of Göbekli Tepe most likely belonged to a special, well-organized group of hunter-gatherers who already possessed significant knowledge and resources. Some researchers suggest that the construction of such monumental complexes may have been one of the factors that later pushed people toward the transition to agriculture. As if religion and rituals appeared first, and only then the need to feed a large number of people led to the domestication of plants and animals. Imagine the scale. To carve and install one such pillar required dozens or even hundreds of people. They must have had tools, logistics, and astronomical knowledge, because the position of some pillars, according to some scientists, is connected to observations of stars and constellations. The pillars depict animals that could have been totems of different clans. Perhaps Göbekli Tepe was not just a temple, but a meeting place for different groups where alliances were made, rituals were performed, and knowledge was passed on. Why did they bury the complex? One theory is climate change or resource depletion. Another is that the ritual was completed and the place became too sacred to leave it open. A third is that a new culture arrived and the old traditions were literally buried. What is especially striking is the level of craftsmanship.
We honor the serpent, the thread of life.
Pillars were not just roughly hewn. They have perfectly flat surfaces, complex reliefs, and even elements that look like symbols or proto-writing. Genetics shows that the populations of Anatolia at that time already had some genetic diversity. This means that people were moving, exchanging genes, and possibly ideas over quite large distances. Göbekli Tepe forces us to rewrite the textbooks. Human civilization did not begin with agriculture. It began with ideas, faith, and the desire to create something greater than mere survival. Perhaps it was here, in these hills of Turkey, That the spark was born that later led to the appearance of the first cities, states, and great civilizations of the Near East. We still do not know all the answers. Direct DNA samples from the builders are still waiting to be discovered. But one thing is already clear. People 12,000 years ago were much smarter, more organized, and more spiritual than we used to think. Göbekli Tepe stands as a silent witness. It reminds us that human history is full of unexpected turns. And every new layer of dust that archaeologists remove can completely change what we thought was the truth. This ancient site challenges everything we believed about the dawn of civilization. It tells us that our ancestors were not primitive savages barely surviving in the wild. They were thinkers, dreamers, and builders capable of creating wonders long before we gave them credit for it. Maybe the real revolution in human history wasn't the invention of farming. It was the birth of collective belief and the courage to build something eternal. Göbekli Tepe is not just an archaeological site. It is a question mark carved in stone that still waits for its final answer. And as long as it stands, it continues to whisper to us across 12,000 years. We have always been more than we seem. If this video hooked you, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. In the upcoming videos, we will uncover more forgotten chapters of human history that DNA and archaeology are only now beginning to reveal. Because the real story of humanity is not written in textbooks, but in stone, in bones, and in our genes.
As the ancient stones fade, the blueprint of a new era emerges.
Pull! Together! Pull! Why not awantin? Pachamamahampi!
Göbekli Tepe is not just an archaeological site. It is a question mark carved in stone that still waits for its final answer. And as long as it stands, it continues to whisper to us across 12,000